Winchester Guildhall. The time is 9:30 a.m. My name is Councillor Martin Todd, Chairperson of the Cabinet and Leader of the Council. This meeting is live streamed from the Council's YouTube channel, and the recording will also be available after the meeting. Subtitles can be switched on, and advice on how to turn these on is set out online. Can everyone ensure mobile phones are on silent, and can I remind members to use their microphones? In the unlikely event that it's necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all the instructions given to you by our team. Please note there is a fire alarm test scheduled for 10:15 a.m. this morning. Can I welcome members of the public to the meeting? This morning we will invite you forward when it is time to make your contribution. Turning to the agenda. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence, and I think we have apologies from Councillor Lerney. The second is changes to membership of Cabinet committees, and we have no such changes. The third is disclosures of interest, and I need to declare that I have disclosable pecuniary interest in respect of items 10, go for 8, 9 and 10 on the agenda due to my additional role as a Hampshire County Councillor. However, as there is no material conflict of interest regarding these items, I have dispensation granted by the Audit and Governance Committee that enables me to speak and vote on these matters. Anyone else? Councillor?
Although my interest is in the same as yours, although I don't see any conflict of interest in the papers today.
No, I think I'm better safe than sorry anyway. Any other conflicts of interest that people want to declare at this stage? No. Okay. The officer who's responsible for the first item of business, Bar End Depot, is stuck in. Sorry. The next item of business is request from councillors to speak. I have Councillor Lee on 8, 9, 10 and 13, Councillor Horrell on 8, 9 and maybe 13, and Councillor Godfrey on 8 and 10. Have I understood correctly? Thank you. Public participation. Mr. Tate has asked to speak on items 8 and 9. He's not here, so there we go. Item 6, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 10th and 25th of September. Cabinet, are you happy to agree these as a correct record? Agree. Leader and Cabinet announcements. Do people have any announcements they would like to make? Councillor Becker.
Thank you. Ooh. I'm happy to say I've got my usual announcement that we have a week of football coaching arranged for half term for children aged 6 to 13. And that's running in Stanmore and River Park and Wickham and Whiteley, and it will be at just £1 per session per day. So if anyone is interested, then they can sign up on the Winchester City Council website.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Croyson.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I have two announcements. So first off, I will talk a quick update on the food waste collection. So last week was the first week of food waste collections in the Winchester district, and we collected just under 10 tonnes. Now, just to put that into a little bit of context, and as someone who spent 20 plus years of his career in a business where forecasting growth was part of my job, I know the risk of extrapolating from an early data point. There are many factors that can affect what will happen in future, but with that caveat, just to give a sense of potential scale, if this volume of food waste recovery were to continue, it would increase Winchester City Council's recycling rate from just over 40% of the total as being recyclable to around about 50%, give or take. Now, over time, the actual numbers might be different for a whole host of reasons. One being that the work we do as a council to encourage more people to use the food waste service rather than put food waste in the normal black bins could push the food waste tonnage up. On the other hand, as people use the food waste service, they may see how much goes into their bins, which may well result in a behavioural change so that they have less food waste. And that, of course, would be a good thing. So it's difficult at this stage to say what exactly will happen in future, but I think that gives a useful bit of context as to the scale of the impact of our food waste collection. But it is important to look beyond the headline numbers. Now, on customer services and social media, and I really do hesitate to tempt fate here, but it is noteworthy that our customer service complaints and questions have been lower than we had prepared for, which is good. And social media feeds have been relatively quiet in relation to the rollout, with only a smattering of, dare I say, sceptical comments from some members of the public. That it will never work, or I don't create food waste was one of my favourites. In most cases, other people in the social media group jump in and offer some more constructive comments. So that, I think, is good. We certainly haven't seen the type of level of community outrage or complaints that some other authorities have seen. So I think that's reflective of the great work that our officers have done to prepare for that. And obviously, as operations scale up, this position continue. We hope that will continue, but we are prepared, for some wrinkles that might appear. I think that's probably enough on the food waste thing. My second announcement relates to our animal welfare team. Now, our animal welfare team at Winchester City Council has retained the elite pair of RSPCA awards, the Paw Prints Awards, which have been retained for the third consecutive year. The RSPCA has awarded the Platinum Paw Prints to the Council for both our stray dog services and for the animal activity licensing. And Winchester City Council is one of only 7 councils in England and Wales to have achieved the platinum status for animal activity licensing. The platinum paw prints were first launched in 2023 and are presented to organisations who have achieved gold paw prints for 5 or more years consecutively. And these awards recognise organisations which have demonstrated exceptional dedication, compassion and innovation in their efforts to protect, promote and enhance the lives of animals. And I'm sure all pet owners in Winchester District are reassured that in the event that their much loved pet comes into the care of our service, then it will be well looked after. So that was a nice award to receive, and congratulations to our animal welfare team for all their hard work in making sure we deliver a great service. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Crimoyson. And not just pet owners, but I suspect our MP will also be very happy about that last award. Good. Any other announcements? No. So we'll now move on to the substantive items of the agenda. Are we going to have answers on any of them? Okay. Okay. So the first item for discussion, then I won't reorder the agenda. I was wondering if we'd reorder the agenda to ensure that we had the relevant officers here. So we'll start with Bar End Depot. This is a relatively straightforward step that needs to be taken. McCarthy and Stone, who were the preferred bidder for redevelopment of this site, have withdrawn from the process. It's something that's happened in other parts of the country on other schemes. There have been changes in the retirement, living and home care market, both locally and nationally, which have had an impact on their commitment to that particular site. Because they've withdrawn, we have a decision in terms of what we should do next with the site. One of the there's a slight typo in what we're planning to do listed here. We could restart the entire process, but given the time pressure of local government reorganisation and other such things, I think the appropriate step is to take one step back in the process and basically go out again to ask for new proposals. There's no intention to change the planning policy, so that we will have the intention is to have a planning policy compliance scheme, including housing, convenience store, and the element of care that's outlined in the planning policy. It's the same mix of uses that was done in the previous marketing. Pragmatic step is essentially recognising that market conditions, the choices made by our external partner are such that we can't continue with the previous bidder, go out again and find a new bidder. And the fact that there was quite a lot of interest shown last time is a clear indicator that that is not only a pragmatic step, but it's one that's going to work. So that's the paper that we have in front of us. We have 3 councillors who wish to speak on this. Councillor Lee, Councillor Godfrey and Councillor Horrell. Take them in that order. Councillor Lee, would you like to come forward and make your comments?
Thank you, Leader. Good morning, Cabinet. This item, I believe, comes at a crucial moment on many levels for senior housing needs and local development, obviously in the face of local government reorganisation on the horizon. As I understand it, across the UK, some 8,000 new senior homes are expected to be completed in 2025, the strongest delivery since 2018, yet still falls far short of the need. The Mayhew Review in 2022 recommended 50,000 new units per year to meet demand. Integrated retirement communities, or IRCs, are driving most of what delivery there is, accounting for over half of all completions and trending towards larger schemes that provide both operational and financial viability. So, Cabinet, can I ask, before Cabinet endorses remarketing on the same or similar terms, can I suggest it may not be wise without some amendment? Repeating the same approach may simply just lead to the same result. No successful bidders for a difficult site. So from my analysis, which suggests that larger integrated retirement schemes are now the dominant and most viable model due to economies of scale in long-term service delivery. So my question really is, should the Cabinet adjust to these marketing changes to attract IRC extra care developers capable of delivering a larger, more viable scheme? The paper states additional marketing costs will be met from existing budgets. So could I ask for confirmation of what was spent previously and what new costs are anticipated in this remarketing? Our merging local plan is not prescriptive, or neither, I believe, the current one about the type of care provision. So I believe a modest shift in the remarketing requirement would not be an issue. And can I also ask, given the alarming state of nature and national evidence on ecosystem collapse, that Cabinet provides reassurance that the nature enhancement opportunities in the plan, even small, I accept, will not be diluted as part of any redevelopment. And finally, my quick look analysis across the district does suggest that there's a wider need, obviously, for senior housing in rural market towns, a shortfall of about 100 to 110 units, roughly one large extra care or 2 50-unit IRCs across the Bishop's Waltham, Denmead and Meon Valley, Wickham corridors. So I think it really is important that the one district approach in getting this development underway in the right way is taken forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Godfrey, you have some comment.
Thank you. Good morning. 14th of October 2014, precisely 11 years ago today, the Cabinet Committee of then Conservative Administration of the City Council met the officer team for an away day at the Royal Hotel here in Winchester to identify and prioritise the major projects that were to be taken forward with the aim of improving services and the income to the general fund budget in the medium to long term. The resultant list included the delivery of a new sport and leisure centre at Bar End, completion of a new depot at Barfield Close, the development of a Carfax site by the station and the Cattle Market car park along Worry Lane, delivery of a redesigned solution for central Winchester, and at the top of the list, the development of the old depot site on Bar End Road. It was clear that once emptied, this site would be the easiest to deliver. All these major projects were taken forward over the following 5 years, with all of them going through several rounds of public consultation and market testing. Contracts were let for 3 of them, and designs that were supported by the general public agreed for the others. In the 6 years since then, since the Liberals took over the City Council, nothing tangible has happened with these projects that we had not already committed the Council to delivering. The Council and Cattle Market proposals are stuck in an endless cycle of consultation. The supplementary planning document agreed in 2018 for central Winchester has not been delivered in any part, with a proposal for Council to give away £25 million of public assets. And now, in the city, with some of the highest land values in this country outside London, we are told that development on this site is not viable. There have been dozens of proposals put forward for development of this site over the last 11 years, with all delivering rental income of over £200,000 a year to the council. Instead, delay in decision and a constant search for the very best solution is costing us £100,000 a year in business rates, plus staff and costs and professional fees for buildings that we do not use. This delay will have cost the council the best part of £2 million so far, with no prospect of a result anytime soon. Over the last 6 years since the old depot was cleared, why hasn't the council moved forward with one of those proposals? We could have had a national rehabilitation centre for the armed forces next to the hydrotherapy pool in the leisure centre, or postgraduate family accommodation that could encourage graduates to stay in Winchester and which could be converted to social housing if demand required, or new leisure amenities for the growing population of Winchester, or dozens more council homes built by the council itself. Instead, there is nothing except more delay, more cost, an embarrassing project failure that the public has to pick up the cost of. Unless this land is used soon for the benefit of Winchester, it will just be sold by the new unitary council that subsumes the City Council in a couple of years to pay for the massive costs of local government reorganisation, which I think we all agree will do little or nothing for Winchester. Will the Cabinet be able to commit to doing anything on this site before they lose control of the finances?
Councillor Horrell, you'd like to make your comment?
Good morning, and thank you, Chair, for allowing me to address Cabinet today. We live in a wonderful historic city and district, but we all know redevelopment is essential. The last major development in the city was the Sport and Leisure Park, which was agreed by the Conservative leadership and is now a thriving asset, helping to keep residents fit and healthy. With attendance way beyond expectations and activities to appeal to a wide demographic of our population, it is a huge success. But since you've taken over the council, absolutely nothing. This week, another failure. You tell us that the developer who wanted to develop the depot site has pulled out. They cite market conditions, but what an excuse when we know we have an ageing population and a great need. You have overseen many consultations, and not that consultations are not important, but just how many do we need? You've spent hundreds of thousands on consultants across the city, but not one plan to redevelop a site signed off. River Park recently, another example of an interested party dropping out and leaving a derelict and dangerous site to the city to manage. In 2018, you had the most comprehensive supplementary planning document for central Winchester agreed by over 3,000 people in the city, and we're still talking. The land alongside the Sport and Leisure Park, which the council owns, is a prime site in the city, and we're now back to the drawing board. How can it be so difficult to manage redevelopment on a site like this? We know redevelopment does not happen unless you want it enough, which is what happened with the Sport and Leisure Centre. Our brief to the officer team was, this development must happen. I'm sorry the chief executive is not here to confirm that that was the message. We worked tirelessly with the community to reassure them and fought off political opposition who just wanted to scupper the plans. But it didn't happen. And now everyone is basking in the glory of the new Sport and Leisure Park. We need homes, and the council is a builder of homes. The local community wants a convenience store on the site at the depot, which has been asked for since 2018. A bar end design framework has been in place since then, but again, no progress. How can it be so difficult? Why? Because you as political leaders don't want it enough, cannot decide, or have the gumption to make it happen. We're all fed up of waiting, actually, and soon we'll all be out of time with local government reorganisation around the corner. Many have expressed interest in the depot site over the years. I know that we've all been lobbied at various times. Why are none of the previous bidders not a possibility? And what is the timetable for this important next step that you want to take today for this site? Or is it just going to drift on? Chair, you really do have to stand up and be counted and do something for something positive for the city. Just get one project underway for the benefit of residents before our council comes to an end. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Horrell. So we have a few questions that people have asked. I don't know, Mr. Coe, if you want to come forward to the table. So taking Mr. Lee's comments, or Councillor Lee's comments, sorry. He had two substantive comments. One was, should we rebalance the proposal in favour of extra care or an integrated retirement community? And the second was about nature enhancement, but maybe and what have been the costs so far and the costs going forward? So on the first point, does the current remarketing preclude somebody coming forward with extra care? I think we have a requirement for social housing or for housing. Could you just clarify where we are on that?
Yes, thank you, Leader. But clearly this will be an open marketing exercise. If the market wants to provide the sort of proposal that Councillor Lee is suggesting, then it will respond in a positive way. So the council is setting out a marketing process that will require bids to be compliant with the planning policy. And I don't think the planning policy will preclude what Councillor Lee is suggesting, but clearly the council wants to achieve best consideration for the site, and the market will respond accordingly on the basis of their market intelligence and what they think is viable and would work on that site.
Thank you. And in terms of costs, roughly how much have we spent? How much will this exercise cost going forward, and how much have we spent so far, roughly?
We've spent circa £15,000 already, and this delay will cost us another 10,000.
Okay, thank you. And then there was a question about ecosystems and nature enhancement. I mean, I think that's covered by our planning policy, which people have to deliver anyway in national policy. But frankly, you could put a geranium in a pot and you would have enhanced the biodiversity of that site, I would have thought. I mean, am I right in understanding that it's covered by planning policy and it's one of the things that people will have to do anyway? Okay. The second set of questions we had, I mean, Councillor Godfrey helpfully outlined the timetable on this and the 5 years under the Conservatives where nothing happened, and without the disadvantages of a pandemic and an economic crash that their own party implemented. He said that the development on this site isn't viable. That's not what we're saying, is it? We're saying that they have decided to pull out, but it very definitely is viable as a proposal. And there wasn't a viability discussion with McCarthy and Stone. So.
No, it is viable, and for market reasons, as we've said, it didn't progress for no other reason than that. And it's not unusual, as we all know, in the property world, for agreed deals to fail.
Also listed a list of other potential developments. I mean, are there some secret proposals that we never got told about or that were never put forward to us? I think we had an open process and anybody who wanted to submit did so, and we took the best of those offers at the time.
That's correct.
Thank you. And the other one that's talked about is in terms of timing. So I think it's useful just to clarify this. So the remarketing would start when? When would it finish? When could we make a decision?
So agents, if subject to approval today, will be going out by the end of this month, and there will be a period of 6 weeks for offers to come in, so that offers come in just after the budget on the 26th of November. We'll be in a position to review those end of the year with a recommendation in January.
Good. Okay. And that would be the same arrangement. So subject to planning, would it be a conditional offer? So
yes, conditional offer.
Okay. And yeah, I think that was probably the last substantive comment that was raised. Cabinet, does anyone else have any questions? Councillor Reach, or to declare a personal interest as well or not?
Well, I have checked with the monitoring officer. I'm not within the demise of the site, but nevertheless, just to be careful, from our front bedroom, the area of our front bedroom, we can survey almost all of the sites, since we're straight over the road, about 10 metres from the edge of the boundary. I'm thrilled that there's such interest in a redevelopment in my ward, particularly one that I can see from front bedroom, as I said. I do share some of the frustrations that it's taken as long to get where we are. And I know my residents particularly those on Milland Road who back onto the site are keen to see progress. But what they're not keen to see is smashing through anything just because of an arbitrary deadline imposed by central government. In this case, we heard about local government reorganisation. So I think the question is, I mean, we need to reassure the residents that it's going to be a good scheme. And could we please do that and assure them that we won't just smash through something just to get it over the line as quickly as possible, and it will be a quality scheme that works for the area.
I think, yeah, okay. How do we assure quality in the process going forward? And actually, the other point which relates to knowing that something's going to be happening, how do we ensure that any potential partner has the financial resilience when they make an offer to know that they should be able to deliver it? I mean, I think we would all expect that a company with the size and reputation of McCarthy and Stone would have been able to do that. But what are the two things to capture that within the process?
So, yes, a big part of evaluating any bid is to look at their covenant strengths, and we use finance to help us with that. We use the case studies and their experience. That's a fundamental point to live is their ability to deliver there, and another evaluation criteria is deliverability itself. So does it fit with market sentiment? Is it economically viable? Is there a market there? And critically also, is it planning compliant? So part of the quality measure is down to the planning process. This isn't a procurement of service, this is a sale of a site, so there's a limit to what we can impose on development, but we rely to some large degree on the planning process to enforce those.
So the wide range of planning policies, which are about how places work, how they connect up to their neighbouring area, all of those kind of things, public realm, etc., will be the things that provide the protection on that front. Councillor Thompson, you had a question.
Yes, I do. Though from memory, there were a number of other interested parties in this site, and I believe a number of other bids. So I wonder whether you could just clarify the need to go out to tender again, rather than just taking the next best option.
We had we shortlisted. We had 12 bids in, 47 expressions of interest. We had 12 bids in, and we shortlisted to 4. One of the 4 pulled out. We went with McCarthy and Stone. When McCarthy and Stone said that they had to withdraw some weeks back, we went to 2 of the underbidders. But after conversations with them and the agent, the conclusion from the agent and ourselves was that it was better to go back out to the market to secure the best consideration.
Councillor Poulter.
This is previously developed land, and so therefore it has a challenge in its own right. Are we still content that we are taking that into account, or do we need to take that into account to the same extent as we did in the first bid? Second question.
I suppose that's a question that the uncertainty about previous development land shows through in the bids that people are prepared to make. I mean, I'm not sure how much we can talk about this, but to what degree are we able to de-risk that for people? Is that something we can answer, or?
Yes, Lee, just to give you some comfort, obviously the proposals we received and the offer prices we received took account of the costs of developing the site, including dealing with any decontamination. And your officers took independent advice on whether those numbers provided by the developers were robust and would be sufficient to deal with the contamination issues. Because clearly, if they weren't, there is a certain amount of risk on the developer, but also a certain amount of risk on the council. So those costs of dealing with previously developed land are factored into this process.
Thank you. So developers are fully aware of the viability of cost. Can I just go on as well that it's a comment really rather than, well, perhaps I for debate.
Any other questions? Any debate?
I raise this because I'm relating back to Councillor Lee's comments that far from us to decide what the business plan of any other alternative bidder is, or the company that was bidding in the first place. But we see extensive marketing and including attempting to rent out properties of a similar nature in other areas. You mentioned market towns. Certainly the ones in Alresford are still for rent many years after they were built. And it is a known concern that actually the public are finding it harder to afford those developments. So I think that it's right that they should make they should be looking at that, but it can't be on any criticism of our council that they have chosen that business plan not to be the one that they want to go forward with.
Councillor Croys.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I was sort of interested to listen through some of the representations here from our councillor colleagues. And I just sort of felt like there was a lot of raking over old ground well before I was on cabinet. And I just want to remind myself and us that the decision today is, do we go forward with remarketing it, which seems to me, bearing in mind that some of those comments also said, well, it's important that we get on and do stuff, that the simplest thing for us to do is to accept that the previous bidder pulled out and that we should go out and look for another bidder. Now, I'm not an expert in commercial property, but I have, over the course of my life, bought houses to live in and then subsequently sold them and moved on to the next one. And there is always a period of jeopardy when you've accepted a bid. And this is in the domestic market, which is far simpler than the commercial market. There's always a period of jeopardy when you've accepted a bid and you don't really know whether the buyer is going to proceed. And there's a risk there. And over time, as you start to see, you know, what they're doing. Ooh. Start proceeding, you get more and more confident. But at any time, a buyer can pull out in the domestic market. It might be for reasons like they've got a job offer somewhere else or some financial impact and so on. And that happens. It's a risk. And in the commercial market, there are far more moving parts for a commercial business to consider. There is the macroeconomic thing, and I think we'd all have to say that the general macroeconomic situation is far more volatile now than it was during the 10-15 years leading up to the pandemic, where it was relatively stable. Very, very volatile. We've had 3 or 4 years which were massively impacted by the pandemic and which created situations where all sorts of businesses couldn't proceed with developments. And I think we're still coming out of that period. And in a way, it doesn't really surprise me that McCarthy and Stone have had a look at things and had to make some hard decisions. They probably didn't want to pull out of this, but the hard realities of business are that they had to make a decision. So I'm somewhat surprised that my colleagues don't seem to be able to acknowledge that and want to rake over a whole history of stuff which goes well back before this administration was the administration. So I will be supporting the proposal to remarket the site, and hopefully we can bring in another good bidder and we can proceed within the next year or year and a half, when after which we'll be in a whole different world of local government. So thank you.
Debate. Right, I will stop and we'll move on. Since taking control of this council in 2019, this administration has cut carbon, increased recycling, improved air quality, built new council houses, delivered a new GP surgery, delivered fantastic new leisure facilities, secured investors and a developer for Central Winchester Regeneration, invested in our high streets and public facilities so that our centres continue to thrive. Oh, we've refurbished our public toilets as well. We have new homes delivered in Winnell, the Valley, Mitchell-Dever, Whiteley, coming in Kings Barton. We've started to buy back HMOs on our council estates and turn them into family homes. We completed building of the leisure centre. We built a new GP surgery, built a new car park in Barfield Close. We built the new KGV pavilion. We have another one on the way coming in River Park. And despite the more difficult circumstances of a pandemic and an economic crisis, we've done that and we've continued to deliver. It's obviously a disappointment that we haven't been able to move ahead at the pace we originally planned for this particular scheme. But the decision in front of us, which interestingly nobody has really challenged or provided any extra perspective on, apart from some of the comments, the helpful comments by Councillor Lee, which I hope we've addressed, is that we go back out to market with this particular scheme and, as it said, remarket the Bar End Depot starting later this month, making a new decision in January, which enables us to move ahead. It's a fairly straightforward proposal. I haven't heard anybody argue particularly against it. So, Cabinet, are you agreed that we proceed on that basis?
Agreed.
Thank you very much indeed. On the subject of building council houses, Councillor Reach, would you like to introduce your paper?
Yes, thank you, Leader. So the paper before us in agenda item 9 relates to a scheme in Sparsholt in Councillor Horrell's ward for the construction of 5 new homes. This has been going on for some time. We originally brought a proposal in 2021 to progress this scheme, and which is the construction of 5 new homes in the gardens of 2 existing properties on Woodman Close and Sparsholt. Since that time, we've had a tender back. That tender was expensive, so we decided that we would go back to market again to see if we could get a better value proposition, which we have subsequently received. This site is constrained. It is in a rural part of the district, so there are unique considerations here, which has meant that the unit cost of providing homes here is higher than elsewhere. Nevertheless, I'm convinced it's important that we progress. Councillor Horrell has quite rightly lobbied extensively because we think this is a very good scheme and it's important to invest in our rural communities as well as in the urban centres in the district. The particulars of the scheme are it's 5 homes, 2 bungalows to a very high accessibility standard and 3 homes to a high but not quite as high accessibility standard. They will be built to the highest energy standards that the council builds to, and they will be an important addition to Sparsholt, where we know there is some need for additional homes. I mentioned that it is an expensive place to build. By the nature of the site, it is a relatively small and constrained site with difficult ground conditions. This means that the unit cost is higher than we would normally find, but we propose to seek Homes England funding of just over £600,000 to contribute towards the total cost of the scheme of around £2 million. I'm looking at officers. I believe the unofficial conversations we've had so far are positive from Homes England, and the amount of subsidy we would be seeking is consistent with what we've seen in the past. So we don't expect there to be any problems. With that Homes England funding, these homes would be offered at social rent. But I must point out in the paper, it does set out if that funding is not forthcoming from government, we will have to look at other rents at higher rent levels to make the business case work. If there's nothing else to add, I think that's the introduction I'd like to give. So in summary, it's a good scheme investing in the rural part of our district and village, but we need to recognise that it is a more expensive place to build new homes than in the urban areas. And happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed. I think before we have questions, we do have three people who want to speak. Mr. Tate wasn't here at the beginning of the meeting, but I'm in a generous mood, so please feel free to come forward and speak on this particular item.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak. Sorry I wasn't here earlier. I did actually have a work commitment for once. Just very briefly on this scheme, I'm grateful for what Councillor Reach says about the scheme, and he says that it's expensive. There's 308 square metres of build here between the two houses and 3 bungalows. That equates to just under £6,700 per square metre. I've said it before, if you looked at Alfred Homes and their build, if they get to 3,500, they're pushing it. This is extortionately expensive. It is obscenely expensive. I spoke at the recent Economy and Housing Policy Committee where the housing strategy was discussed, and the paper made reference to supporting registered providers and other affordable housing providers in the district to deliver housing. The £337,500 coming out of the Section 106 monies, if you went to those commercial developers who've put that money into the pot and said to them that we'll be building houses at a cost of just under £7,000 a square metre, they would have incredulity at the cost of that. This scheme is not worth progressing. Okay, I don't know what the figures are, the final figures for the houses you're buying off of Cala Home, and I don't particularly support the policy. I believe that Winchester should be delivering additional houses, not just switching it from RPs to the council. But if you can, I don't know what those figures are, but comparing the cost of delivering houses there to what is happening in Sparshot, in Woodman's Close, is like a fantasy world. I've had 25 years association with the Winchester Housing Trust, something which is very close to my heart. And our brilliant chief executive, who did actually speak at planning committee recently when the Pitt Manor revised proposals came forward, if the Winchester Housing Trust or many other affordable housing providers or RPs could look on that amount of subsidy per dwelling, it would fundamentally change the picture of the delivery of affordable housing in the district. It is not worth progressing. Cut your losses on Woodman's Close and deliver affordable housing more efficiently elsewhere. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. This re-tender for 5 new council homes is small in number but significant in opportunity. It's a chance to demonstrate how Winchester can deliver greener, better, faster homes and reduce future costs for both tenants and the councils. And picking up on the previous theme of costs, we know that small rural sites like this, and we recognise that often carry higher costs. But I need to ask, have the housing team looked at modern methods of construction, MMC? Because I believe that that approach can more than offset the costs through shorter site prelims, reduced waste, few weather delays, and I could go on. The community benefits of MMC are clear and measurable. 40 to 50% fewer deliveries, less noise and dust, and safer site, especially on this difficult site. Earlier completion, around 4 months faster, saving money in temporary housing, bringing rent revenue in sooner. Factory quality control gives warmer, healthier homes with fewer defects and lower bills, improves through life costs. Local jobs and apprenticeships through Winchester-based assembly and joinery firms. Biodiversity protection, shorter on-site activity means less harm. And MMC visibly supports the Carbon Neutrality Action Plan and our Nature Improvement Plan. So considering modern methods construction will allow us also to test the Homes England's MMC framework and prepare us early for future home standard compliance, which is all coming. In short, MMC isn't an experimental option. It is mainstream elsewhere, compliant, and can provide future-proof benefits. So can I ask for Cabinet and officers' comments as to why MMC hasn't been considered as part of the options? And can I also ask I may have got this wrong, but from what I can read, why is the retendering being run under a JCT 2016 design and build model when the JCT 2024 version now includes elevated sustainability clauses in core? Tenders, I understand, were based on Part L standards with air source heat pump and PVs, but not to the AECB fabric standard. And for those who don't know, the Association of Environmental Conscious Buildings has a variety of standards with some brilliant sustainable standards. And given that that would mean, if we did go down that line, a grid use reduction, 600 kilowatt hours per home per year, improving cost, comfort and resilience. Is it not possible to reconsider? This is a difficult site, as Councillor Reach mentioned, but can I ask why, if we're using piling, why don't we integrate geothermal energy piles, combining structure and heat exchangers in the foundations? This would reduce long-term energy costs, improve cooling, given the rising climate temperatures, lower maintenance costs on council housing stock. So can I suggest, Chair, that in a difficult construction market, we need to perhaps think differently. Innovation is the route to improved affordability and resilience. Can I also ask for clarification as to whether we are serious about when the financial solutions to getting these housing developments in place would actually mean an increase in rents for the occupants? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Horrell.
Chair, thank you for allowing me to speak on this paper this morning. And let me declare an interest given the location of this site, and because I believe it also demonstrates an important commitment to council housing in the rural parts of our district. It is absolutely fantastic that after so many years, we are here today to agree the contract for the development of 5 new homes in Woodman Close, Sparshott. I welcome the opportunity to proceed with this long-awaited project, but need to seek clarity from you and reassurance about the plan detailed in the paper, please. The land belongs to the City Council and was identified by a previous leader of the council, Keith Wood, for the potential to add new homes in the village, which both he and I represent. Once upon a time, land availability and costs were key issues for building council homes, but not in this case. The land provides an effective and efficient way to provide more needed social housing in Sparshott. Residents and the parish council have fully supported this scheme for years, which is a positive. But as the years have ticked by, the costs have grown. Please, can you tell me why the specification is so expensive? Piled foundations are clearly not cheap. Chair, I worry that you're agreeing that you may change the properties to affordable rents. Social is amazing, but I would ask that you consult with councillors representing the area and the parish before such a decision is taken, if needed, as the project proceeds. The construction plan for the site and contractor's compound is a key consideration due to the limited public space, and I formally request this is discussed and agreed with the parish council and the ward councillors before implementation. Likewise, the construction management and traffic management plan before the commencement of construction. We're on a rat run when the M3, A34 and 303 has an issue, and we don't want this to add to our troubles. I question how much the 2 bungalows detailed in 11.5 of the paper have added to the build costs, and the 3 houses built to M42 accessibility standards. What has given rise to this level of specification? This is different from the previous documents agreed. I'm not aware of the level of demand in the current housing need detail. I'm not aware of this level of demand in the current housing need detail. Please can you clarify why this specification? What data supports this requirement? And why have you never come back to the elected representatives to discuss this before presenting the paper today? The 2021 outline business case made no reference to this specification. In 11.6, you are indicating that local residents may be excluded because of the standard to which these homes will be specified. This has never been discussed with the community and the parish council during consultation or identified as a local need. So please advise how we have arrived at this specification and the potential exclusion of local residents. In the officer report supporting planning permission in June 23, there was no reference to the need for this level of specification. I'm sorry you haven't seen fit to discuss this when the village has waited so patiently for years for this scheme to work through the system. If you specify homes that residents with local needs cannot access, there will be uproar in the village, and I think rightly so, because having agreed a plan more than 4 years ago, this is now different. It's not that anyone is against houses built to this specification, and if they're needed, absolutely brilliant. But it is different from previous discussion and has a potential outcome that limits those with a local need to be able to access the properties. I trust that you will be able to formally address these concerns before progressing with this much needed, much wanted, and really desired scheme. Thank you.
Thank you all for your comments. Councillor Reach, would you like to respond to
Yes, thank
any
you.
questions?
So I'll start with Mr. Tate's comments. As I said, this is an expensive place to build homes, but it clearly demonstrates our commitment to the rural part of the district. You know, you also raised a concern about purchase of properties from other developers. Well, I'm afraid market conditions would dictate at the moment that's the way you do. If all we're bothered about is number of units, we buy from developers. But what this scheme demonstrates is actually we have a broader approach to make sure that our rural parts of the district are not left behind. You know, that's why it's worth investing this money here in the rural part of the district. So I accept it is expensive per square metre, but I still think it's value for money, or I wouldn't be bringing it forward. Councillor Lee, thank you. As usual, you raise very technical issues. I'll look to the officers to advise on MMC. In terms of, you mentioned a couple of other things about geothermal heating, since we are going to have to do piling on this site. Again, I'm not the expert here. My suspicion is we've talked about the financial constraints we face on this site. I haven't seen a business case as to whether installing things like geothermal heating and cooling would work over the life of the project. My suspicion would be it adds a layer of complexity and novelty to what we're trying to do here. So I must reiterate that we're building these homes to a very good environmental standard. We could always go further, but I'm pretty confident. Well, I am confident that we've got the balance right between financial viability, novelty of doing it, and warm homes that will be cheap to heat. So, I mean, officers, any comment on other construction techniques? If not, that's fine. We can move on.
We would have considered all the different aspects that have been raised, absolutely. And the planning consent that was gained at the time would have been the one that we felt was appropriate. But we do continue to obviously to monitor things like MMC, but it's always really on a site specific basis.
And Councillor Lee, the door is always open to discuss these things outside of a formal meeting like this. Genuinely interested to hear what other opportunities there may be to improve the efficiency of our build, frankly. Councillor Horrell, thank you for your comments. You said you were supportive. There were quite a lot of caveats in there. I'll seek to address them where I can. I think your first point was around were we to have to change, were the Homes England funding not forthcoming, were we to have to change the rent, I'm happy to give the commitment that we would talk to ward colleagues, recognising how long you've been lobbying for this and how long you've been, championing the scheme. So happy to give that commitment. In terms of construction, I think we ordinarily would consult with parish councils, but again, happy to absolutely give that commitment that we will do that to minimise disruption for that local community, because it is, I know the site well, it is a very constrained site. How much you asked about the bungalows and level of accessibility standards? Well, the issue is, this is an emerging area and we're seeing increased pressure on certainly the disabled facilities grant that the council gives to keep people in their homes. So this may have moved on from when the scheme was originally conceived of, but I'm absolutely convinced this is the right thing to do, because it's better to build these homes to the standards we know they will be needed to be at in the future, rather than go in and do disruptive retrofit, which inevitably ends up being more expensive. Officers, Mr. Hendy, any comments on that?
No, that is that's the case, Councillor Eaton. Just to add, because Councillor Horrell asked the question in terms of the need for the as demonstrated on the housing register. At the moment, there are 17 households registered from the parish with a housing need, and of those 17 households, 2 of those households have a 2-bed housing need. Thus, the development of those 2-bed bungalows.
Yeah, so just building on the point around local needs, there's a reason that this scheme's going ahead in Sparsholt. The local need there is high, it's recognised to be high. And the absolute commitment I can give you is that they will be let in accordance with our allocations policy, which was most recently ratified in 24, I think, but has largely been the same since 2017. So I can't say specifically to whom they will go, but the reason they're in Sparsholt is because that's where the local need is. I think that covers all the questions, unless I've missed anything.
There was one about using the JCT 2016 framework,
yes,
rather than the JCT 2024 framework, which I expected you to know, Councillor Reid.
I can come in there if you like. So our procurement team have advised we use the 2016 version of it. I can, of course, discuss that with them after this meeting, just to double check that that is still the advice they would give, but that was only at the point of going out to tender, which was only a couple of months ago. But I will double check that. Thank you.
On the subject of MMC, I recently visited a local business that constructed, uses those kind of things, and effectively, while talking about prefab, I mean just the modern version of it, to put it in simple terms. So it's very often based around standard units rather than bespoke units that are particular for a site. But the one thing obviously can't save money on is groundworks. I mean, do we have any sense of where the groundworks cost sits? What proportion of the cost is groundworks in this particular case when it's a difficult site, as opposed to the actual building of the building, which I think most people assumes is most of the cost, but often isn't?
I can't give you an exact percentage, but I think, as you're perhaps suggesting a little bit, it's going to be really high here, partly because groundworks anyway for 5 units would be quite high as a percentage anyway, but then you've also got the pile foundations, utility diversions, etc., that are needed here, which are site specific. So it will be quite a high proportion due to the nature of the site.
I think that's quite a helpful perspective, because the building of the building in some levels is a more straightforward, is the bit that varies less from site to site, as opposed to making sure that the ground is ready to be built on. And it's useful to have that clarity as to what's driving this cost with this particular site. Any other questions from Cabinet colleagues? Any debate? Councillor Cromwell.
Yeah, I sort of want to start by just saying I support the going ahead with this proposal for a small number of homes in our rural community. We've had been a recent conversation I've been involved in relation to national parks and whether you should or shouldn't be building into national parks. And one of my views on this is that if you kind of don't build in places like Sparshot, a nice little rural village, eventually they will decline. And it's really important that you have sensitive and, or I would call it organic development in places like Sparsholt and other villages right across the district. So, you know, as a matter of principle, even though, you know, note the comments about it being very expensive, I think that is the trade-off here of, you know, you having small scale, which, and as Mr. Egan has commented, you know, that means that the groundworks and so on are a lot more expensive per unit than if you buy units in a place like Kings Barton, where, you know, is you know, much more scaled up and hence cheaper per unit. And there's pros and cons to both types of development, and we need both. So it's not a question of either or. I think, you know, it's important that we have these small developments in places like Sparshot, and it enables people either in that community or very close to that community or with very strong connections to that community to be homed in the community that they wish to stay in. So I'll be supporting it for that reason. And, you know, noted the comments about it being expensive, but I think we need to take a longer term view on that. And if there are techniques such as Councillor Lee suggested that could bring the unit cost down over the long term, then they should be fed into the housing team. And maybe next time the housing team will have a really serious look at that, and maybe they have done already. So, you know, we have to just, you know, go with what we have. Otherwise, we'll just be delaying it, and it just won't happen within the lifetime of this council. So I'll be supporting the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Before we do any more debate, I realise I do need to ask, there is an exempt appendix, item 13, which relates to this particular paper. Councillor Lee and Councillor Horrell suggested they might want to speak to it. I don't know if any cabinet members want to speak to it. Does anybody want to have a discussion about the exempt paper? I think the high level comments about finances have probably been made, but I don't know. I'm not seeing anything from cabinet. I'm not seeing anything from councillors on the floor. Okay, so we will take, sorry, Councillor Horrell. Right, well, in that case, we do unfortunately now need to move into exempt session. And that will mean that we stop the recording for a brief period. And any members of the public and journalists will need to leave. It won't be for very long. It'll be about 5 or 10 minutes at the most. And then we'll come back in. We'll finish the debate on the paper, having had our discussions on the exempt session, and then move on to the final. Okay, so I think there's only 2 members of the public here. Is that right? 2. Okay, thank you. I'd like to move that we move into exempt session. Yeah, any seconder? Thank you. So, move into exempt. Yeah, right, okay. We're in this. back into public session. If we just get everybody back in. Okay. Right, please restart if you haven't. Thank you very much indeed. Welcome back to this meeting of Winchester City Council Cabinet on October the 14th, 2025. We're now out of exempt session. We had some finances that we needed to discuss that were confidential, and now move back to debate on the paper. We've heard comments from Councillor Cremoyson. Does anybody else want to comment? Councillor Porter.
And probably there is public transport, there is a potential for a job. So for me, I'm very expensive. It's worth it when you see someone move into their own home, safe and secure.
Thanks, Councillor Porter. Councillor Cutler.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I mean, Mr. Tate made the point about it being very expensive, and I think we all recognise that. But the business case does work just about. He also made the point about registered providers would not go ahead with this scheme, and I think that really is the ultimate point about having an HRA and having the ability to do something for the public good that would not be done in a commercial market. So that's crucially important. From my perspective, as a representative of a relatively rural ward, it's disappointing that we can't do more of these, and it's disappointing clearly because the sustainability of these villages is difficult enough. And I think in this particular case, we're clear that there is demand, and we're clear that there is still some public transport, so there is an element of sustainability around it. I mean, in my own ward, was a similar scheme that would cost a similar amount, but there is not the demand and there is no public transport. So that would tip it over the edge, I think, on that basis. So I think it's unfortunate that it's this expensive, but I'm happy to support the process because I think we've been rigorous enough with the with the budgeting on this to demonstrate that it does just about work.
Any final comments, Councillor Reach?
I'm sure you'll include them in summing up, Leader, but just coming out of the exempt session, we discussed the change to one of the recommendations, and just to make that commitment publicly, that should that come to pass, that we would change the rent structure, that I would absolutely talk to the ward colleagues and make that commitment publicly.
Thank you very much indeed. And thank you for the debate. It's raised some important issues. Inevitably, if we're making a commitment to deliver council houses in rural areas where there's demand, where the infrastructure is in place, where there's the public transport, the local social and physical infrastructure to be able to support rural development, we are effectively making a commitment that some of our developments are going to be more expensive, particularly in the constrained availability of sites that you get in rural areas as opposed to urban ones. You don't have that many choices about where to build, and in this particular case in Sparsholt, we've ended up with a site where actually just preparing the site and making it ready to put houses on it is very expensive. That is almost certainly the most expensive thing that we have here in terms of making the site available. But we don't have other choices. It's not as if there's lots of allocation easily available elsewhere in Sparsholt where these houses could happen instead. And so we're presented with the decision that we are. And in that case, I think it is right to go ahead. There is need there. This business case works in the context of the finances that we saw presented. There is, to get to the business case we want, we are assuming that there should be some degree of government support, and our case is built on that basis. And I think it's right that we will have a discussion about how we make the finances work in the event that that support is not forthcoming, and that is only prudent. We have to make, we have a duty and a responsibility to the tenants who in the end fund the HRA, but also to the public on whose behalf we use the Section 106 funds that are made available by developers to ensure that we deliver the best possible return across the whole district in terms of what we get for that development. I mean, those Section 106 funds are mostly generated in our major settlements. We need to make sure that we are delivering cost effectively, but to a high quality standard and high environmental standard, as many houses and homes that we can right across our entire area. So I do support the recommendations that we have in front of us, subject to a couple of adjustments on the fourth recommendation. So I've made two minor changes to the fourth recommendation. We had a discussion about the contingency that is allowed for in the finances. That essentially just means putting a bit of money aside for unforeseen circumstances, which our experience on recent developments shows may be needed. But that may also give us more flexibility in terms of what we're able to do on rent. So, and we also have a commitment from the Cabinet Member for Good Homes to engage with ward members on what would happen in the event that money isn't forthcoming from the government. So based on that, two minor amendments on the fourth recommendation. The first is to add the words after anticipated, or contingency spending is less than expected. And the second is to add the words after strategic director in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Good Homes. So the full recommendation, fourth recommendation reads that if Homes England funding is not available lower than anticipated, or the contingency spending is less than expected, the strategic director in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Good Homes be authorised to deploy Section 106 affordable housing developer contribution, etc., etc. I think let's actually say different than expected, rather than less than expected. Sorry, more than expected. Yeah. More than expected. Yes, it would logically. Why don't we put in different? And that gives us more flexibility. So the recommendation is now that if Homes England funding is not available or lower than anticipated, or the contingency spending is different than expected, the strategic director in consultation, etc., with the Cabinet Member for Good Homes be authorised to. Okay, have we got that? Good. So we have four recommendations. The first is to authorise the corporate head of asset management to enter into the design and build contract and all the associated easements, waivers, leaves, agreements, etc., with all the utilities, neighbours, etc., etc., to proceed. The second is an increase in the project budget of 101,000 to meet the total scheme cost. The third is that it's only viable if successful 106, noting that the scheme is only viable if substantial 106 affordable housing developer contribution funding is used, and that we agree to that. And the fourth is the revised recommendation that I just talked about. Cabinet, are you agreed with those recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to item 10, which is a very exciting proposal. So, Councillor Thompson, please take us through the proposal. Agritech innovation, marvellous.
It is Sparshott again, yes. Thank you, Leader. And I'd just like to welcome to the table Suzanne Dixon and Andrew Gostelow, who, if you've got any technical questions, I'm sure they'll be able to answer them. Anyway, thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be presenting this paper to Cabinet today. I'm often asked, what can the council do to help those working in rural businesses, and what help is available to farmers and the farming industry in particular? And of course, in recent years, we've been very lucky as a council in that we've had shared prosperity funding from the government, and we have been able to help a number of, well, actually quite a substantial number of businesses out in the rural areas with that funding. But I'm particularly grateful to our officers today who have identified this particular source of government funding, and they've worked in close partnership with Sparshott College to develop these proposals and to develop them enough to apply for a grant of £850,000 under the government's Digital Innovation Inclusion Fund. Not a snappy title, I'm afraid. As a rural district, agriculture is hugely important, and it's a hugely important sector for our economy. And the importance of this rural economy and agriculture is really well understood and recognised in the Council's Green Economic Development Strategy. So I'm delighted that in collaboration with Sparshott College, who will be delivering the training, we have been able to put together these exciting proposals in support of this vital sector of our district. The bid has already gone in, and if we are successful, and I believe we will find out about that towards the end of this month, the funding will deliver a programme to equip farmers and aspiring new farmers and those working within the industry the chance to really experience the state-of-the-art equipment with hands-on training. The programme's been designed to provide cutting-edge agri-tech and practical farming knowledge by providing advanced digital skills to improve crop yields. It will also help farmers to monitor and reduce impact, which in turn will be useful should they wish to apply for the Council's low carbon assessments and green business audits. We know that this is exactly the kind of training that the farming clusters have been asking for. Improved skills and training to enable the adoption of precision farming, optimising land use and reducing resource waste, and contributing to biodiversity protection and sustainable land management. So I think this is an extremely hugely exciting project. Obviously, with all government funding, it has to be in and out of the door incredibly quickly, and I know that our legal team and other officers and teams in the council are onto it, drawing up the agreement with Sparshott. So I really hope you will feel able to support the recommendations before you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Thompson. We have two councillors who wish to speak on this, Councillor Lee and Councillor Godfrey. So Councillor Lee, would you like to come forward?
Thank you, Leader. I fully support this grant application to the Digital Innovation Inclusion Fund. It's really encouraging to see a green economic development initiative that bridges the skills, sustainability and innovation in the rural economy. Sustainable farming with best green credentials is important for all of us and nature, so much needed. I do have a few quick questions, please, which I hope you can help me with in terms of clarification. It's difficult to gauge the scale of the need compared with the relative modest target of training 20 farmers and 40 students. So do we know what the actual size of the overall demand might be for our district? The paper notes that trainees could later apply for the Council's low carbon assessment and green business audits. Are these going to be free of charge, and who's going to deliver them? Para 2.2 talks about match funding. That Sparsholt College will provide £37,000 of match funding. Well, if it's match funding, it probably would be 222,000 plus. So I guess that is an error. So just seek clarification. I'm sure that's the case. And could the Cabinet be reassuring us that the robust monitoring and KPI reporting will be in place? How will the council, as a lead authority, track milestones and financial compliance, and what roles will Sparsholt play in that oversight? And then in terms of partnership integration, how will this project link with other agri-tech or local nature recovery strategy initiatives to maximise impact? Is there a South Downs National Park element to this initiative? It's not referenced in the report, so I would imagine not, but grateful for clarification. And who or how will we own and control the precision farming and remote sensing data generated from this initiative? It'd be good to see public accessibility for the wider farming benefit and for those who are interested in the outcomes from this program. Maybe that should be a program milestone after March 2026, or maybe towards the end of March 2026. And then in terms of the plan for sustaining training and equipment beyond March 2026, what's the plan? Will Sparsholt continue to provide ongoing support? I think it's hinted at in a KPI community and ecosystems. And perhaps should we be requesting a sustainability plan with additional milestones to ensure the legacy is enduring? And then finally, well, not quite finally, but ultimately, the environmental outcomes. How will the carbon and biodiversity outcomes be quantified? Who will do that? And will we credit those to us in terms of our carbon neutrality action plan and nature improvement plan? And then finally, the risk and contingencies. I see on page 64 a list of detracting factors, which I guess is related specifically to the program, but I'm not sure there's a risk in terms of, for example, what's the contingency plan if DSIT withholds or delays final payment? And perhaps there's a need, is there for legal assurance in terms of grant control compliance, given that Sparsholt is both partner and beneficiary? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you. It's so good of you to spend so much time on my ward, and so you should. I welcome the proposal to support the work of Sparsholt College. The college is a national centre for developing excellence in agriculture and other rural skills. That is a key component to the economic vitality of this region. The college has been innovative in the way it has developed partnerships to provide valuable opportunities to a growing population of students. This approach has raised the profile of the college as a hub for improving skills, and so adding productivity to our workforce, attracting more investment, so increasing its value to our region. And having read the programme summary in the report, I'd welcome details of the financial investment the council is making into this scheme, as it seems that any officer time will be covered by the government grant, while the college will be covering its own costs. Is the council itself actually committed to supporting Sparsholt College in a tangible manner? If a bid for funding is successful, what will our council staff do for the £37,000 grant funding to directly support the work of the Sparsholt College? Or will the council just be a conduit for a government grant? What will the council staff be doing to deliver digital skills to farm workers? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Gosh, yes, lots of questions there, and I wonder whether either Ms Dixon or Mr Costello might be able to start on some of those, in particular the scale of need. I mean, we're obviously aware that this this grant only covers a small proportion of students and farmers, and there are many out there. But I don't know whether the officers have got any further clarification about the need.
That's fine, Councillor Thompson. Yes, both myself and Ms Dixon will sort of attempt to address some of those questions that have been presented. In terms of need, Ms Dixon and along with Sparsholt carried out an extensive consultation with actual farmers, farm clusters, NFU, etc., to establish whether this was required, the need, and the level of the need. So certainly all of that feedback has clearly indicated that this as an infant project is somewhere certainly to start to support the development of farming and the rural economy going forward and future-proofing it for the future. We have set the number of participants based on the intelligence we have at 20 and 40 as a start of a 10, and we do believe that the way that this particular programme has been developed will allow us to, along with Sparsholt, to extend this programme going forward in the future should funding opportunities arise. So that's certainly something that we'd like to consider going forward, and we've certainly developed that in terms of the thinking around the programme. I know, Ms Dixon, you wanted to come in on one of the points.
So I'll just say that there are roughly 1,200 farms in Winchester District. We've worked with the 3 clusters, the River to Test, the South Downs and the Candover. And there are roughly 40 farms engaged regularly in each of those clusters. We also engaged with 350 farms who we know take students from Sparsholt on work experience. So that was the group where we asked how we could help, how we could support. And this was one of the areas that came up in those discussions. I'll pick up on a later point from a colleague, apologies, I've got my back to you, about sustainability beyond the pilot, because that's what it is. We know from those discussions within the clusters and those connected to the college that there's likely to be an appetite for greater growth following this pilot. We are looking already for opportunities to fund that, to continue and grow this. So I think that clarifies that point.
And I'm happy to pick up on a couple of other points that were, sorry, Councillor Thompson.
No, I was just going to say, yes, what the green audits were mentioned, and whether that is a free service, and also the match funding, and also how we would monitor the benefits that this this training is going to provide. I think that's probably.
I'll let Ms Dixon respond to in terms of monitoring the carbon or the actual carbon emissions and the benefits of that. But in terms of the audits that the council offers, we've sought funding for those, and we will be providing those low carbon audits and green business audits for these businesses if they wish to take up those to then continue the work as part of that as a funded opportunity. I think the question also we had around the agreements with Sparsholt, etc., and the risks to Winchester City Council, just to confirm that we've had extensive meetings with our colleagues in the legal team, and we have already developed a grant contract with Sparsholt, and will be passporting the majority of the delivery responsibilities to Sparsholt, who are comfortable and happy to take those on, and that's a very typical and usual way that the council would deal with delivery of activities through a third partner. In terms of the role of the local authority, this actual fund does require a lead authority to be part of this in order for an application to come forward. So we have that role as lead authority. The government within the particular fund set that at 10%, and so that figure of 37,000 is based on the 10% of the fund application, and we have a series of responsibilities in terms of managing and monitoring the performance of Sparsholt and the delivery of the training, the financial elements of the purchase and use of the equipment through the capital programme, and then reporting back to government on those KPIs. And so that will be the role of the local authority, and that is very similar to the role of the local authority took through the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and the Rural England Prosperity Fund, and prior to that through the COVID grant activity as well. Ms Dixon.
So to pick up on one of the points, we hope that the capital expenditure on the equipment that is needed to read the data from satellites to farmers, that will be available to them in sessions after this pilot, and we will look at ways to continue to make that happen. The college are very keen to continue to offer sessions where farmers are taught alongside current students, and to get that knowledge exchange and exchange of views and experience. So again, that is something that we will be supporting them to continue, and we believe that that's an important part of this. We'll carry out baseline evaluations of the farms before beginning this work, and then that will be evaluated and measured through the revenue element of this, through the Sparsholt staff and their expertise.
Thank you very much indeed. Cabinet colleagues, do you have any questions on this paper? Any debate? Oh, question.
I do. This will enthuse everybody, I'm sure, that takes part in this. I noticed that Space South Central have been involved in this. We know that rural connectivity is a challenge in itself. Are we anticipating or hoping that this will bring benefits to rural communities as well as the farms themselves, or is this part of the ongoing work that we're trying to do for rural connectivity? I know we know farms can't report milk figures. We can't get connections in any way. So is this? Do we anticipate an increasing improvement in this as a result of this work?
I don't think Councillor Porter, that is something we particularly linked to. Obviously, we're very aware as an economy team the wider challenges within the rural community and rural connectivity, both in terms of jobs and people moving around the district, etc. So we do think that there could be some spin-off opportunities from this in terms of actually further developing that agenda. And of course, this is another indication of the economy team's sort of commitment and involvement within the sort of the wider rural activity. So as a galvanizing piece of work rather than as a specific piece of work that will spearhead something coming out of it in terms of the wider agenda, I think.
I think it's a very exciting prospect actually to build those links, which I don't think anybody would ever have imagined without your thought. So thank you.
Anyone else? Any debate? Councillor Cutler, you need to declare it.
I'll declare an interest as a fairly limited farmer these days, but I fully support this. The reality is that if this makes life easier for farmers, they will take it up, and it has to be delivered in that manner. But I think it's really important that how technology can reduce wasteful inputs, particularly, we're concerned about fertilizer and nitrates, the use of satellite imagery is crucial for developing far better precision techniques. So anything that saves money is also quite important for most fairly challenged farming businesses, and I think there will be tremendous uptake of this. So I welcome it hugely.
Councillor Thompson, any last thoughts?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Lee and Councillor Godfrey for their support for the scheme, and also the officers who have worked so hard with Sparsholt. I think we're absolutely delighted to be partnering them in this way. As Councillor Godfrey said, you know, Sparsholt College is a recognised world centre for agriculture learning, and it's certainly been a huge investor in alternative energies and alternative ways of doing things, which has been fantastic, and long may it continue. So and we've also learned that actually you know, this is just the start, because once they've got the equipment, and the plan is that they will continue to train students and farmers in the new technology. Councillor Cutler has said, you know, anything that makes farming easier and cuts waste is obviously a really good thing. So I think it's fantastic that we've put in the bid, and fingers crossed that we get a really positive result. And thank you very much again for spotting this opportunity.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd join with you, Councillor Thompson, in wanting to thank Ms Dixon and Mr Costello for the work that they've done on this. The work partnering with Sparsholt, reaching out via the NFU, the farm clusters, farmers directly, and our involvement ongoing, that's exactly the kind of approach that we most want to be taking in terms of how we do things, and to see it brought to life and such a fantastic project coming out of it is really great, and hugely appreciative of everything you've done on it. So thank you. It's a well-known fact that, you know, one of the best ways to drive growth, and we do need to drive growth at the moment, is when government, education, business work closely together to enable new innovation, the implementation of new technology and new methods. And that's what we have in front of us today. Farming is changing. The skills needed are changing. And no sector is immune from the huge changes we're seeing to remote sensing, computing, automation, computer control. It's changing all parts of life, and it's also changing farming. And those new skills that come out of that, of precision farming, are not something that you can pick up as you go. They do need that support and education. And we're incredibly lucky to have such a national centre of such quality as Sparsholt within our district, and the great work that they do and the part they play within the further and higher education family right across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. One of the things that we put in our Green Economic Development Strategy is that being more environmental, tackling the challenges of climate change, and in the case that we're talking about here, excess use of, or higher than needed use of chemicals on our land, is not contradiction to growth and improvement and innovation and better business. And to me, that remains true, and this project demonstrates that once again. You know, we will be helping farmers save money on the chemicals that they're using. That will benefit our water and our land, but it will also ensure that we continue to have a productive and thriving and growing agricultural sector as much as we're able to ensure that within our district. So this really is a fantastic piece of work. It brings to life, in a way that I don't think we could have dreamt of, really, that the principles that we're trying to put in place to support our district and to see our district thrive. You know, having a learning culture, having a commitment to improving the environment, having a commitment to supporting business. It's a fantastic proposal, and if I look at the recommendations in front of us, noting the grant bid, and subject to the grant proposal being agreed, approving the budgets that go with that, and delegating to the corporate head of economy and community the ability to agree the necessary memorandum of understanding and the grant agreement. The recommendations feel quite small compared to the proposal we have in front of us. But it is that their recommendations I fully support, and Cabinet, I would like us to agree this and to wish this fantastic, really well thought through and developed project all success as it moves forward and hopefully secures the grant that it so richly deserves. So Cabinet, do you agree with those recommendations?
Great.
Great.
Thank you very much indeed. We have one more item that we need to talk about, which is noting future items for consideration by Cabinet as shown in the forward plan. Are you happy to note that, Cabinet? I think with that, we have reached the end of our agenda. Thank you indeed. There we go. Thank you to, so if our two strategic directors, Ms. Heaton and Mr. Hendy, pass on thanks to all the officers who were involved, and indeed if we can pass it on to any colleagues in the legal and finance teams that were involved for their work, please do so on top of the thanks given in the meeting here today. But with that comment, we've reached the end of the agenda and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much indeed. Stop the recording.